Good afternoon. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I invite you to join us. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Kolpak.
Here.
Epcorn.
Here.
Preston.
Here.
Strand.
Here.
Mahoney.
Here. Tonight, we're going to show a video on July 14th at the critical incident. Our police officers were taken to Sanford Health with their injuries. Officers Andrew Duddas and Tyler Hayes were hospitalized for weeks and throughout that time formed close bonds with the surgeons, physicians, nurses, and other medical staff. In this video, you will hear directly from the members of Andrew's and Tyler's care teams who spent countless hours helping to guide them through the recovery journeys. The City of Fargo and the Fargo Police Department express their sincere appreciation to all local first responders who helped care for our officers and their families during this difficult time.
I took care of Officer Doris. The moment that he was able to talk to us, he had probably the best attitude I've ever had a patient in the hospital. He was always super grateful for everything that we did. He was very clearly committed to his recovery and would do anything that we asked him to do. It was just a pleasure to take care of him all the way around.
I started taking care of Tyler Haas. He definitely started to open up almost immediately. We definitely built that good rapport with each other, and kind of from there things took off. We trusted each other, and just knowing that Tyler had goals to, go back and do his police duties again. We talked about what he wants to do, down the road, and that he is sticking to those goals. Just so amazing to see the community rally behind these officers and just support them.
I've probably never seen everyone in the hospital, the entire team come together like they did for this. One of the reasons why I come to work every day knowing that we're going to do good work and take care of people.
Just seeing our EMS, FPD, and all the different, law enforcements, the first responders to come together and just rally behind not only each other, but behind the nurses, and just making sure that we had everything that we needed to care for these individuals and that they were going to be safe while they were hospitalized.
Everyone else in the community realizes that we're all in this together. This event affected everyone that lives here, but when something terrible happens, this community comes together better than almost any place I can imagine.
Very good. Is there a motion to approve the order of the agenda? Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carried. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the August 21st, 2023 regular meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion or corrections? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items 1 through 29?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Kolpak.
Aye.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Preston.
Aye.
Strand.
Yes.
Mahoney.
Aye. We have resident comment period right now. I have two people speaking tonight. Noah Spearling. Noah Spearling. Tracy Wilkie, you're here. You can start. Maybe Noah will show up after you speak.
Bonjour. I am Wabishki Guiden Ikwe, citizen of the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa. I am the daughter of the late Murray Wilkie and Jimmy Burnell. I am the great-great-granddaughter of Chief Jean-Baptiste Wilkie and many others. First of all, I would like to thank our ancestors, all our ancestors that came before us, that we may be here today. First, I would like to thank Chandler and Desi from the Harm Reduction Center for the presentation they did last week and for calling out what it is, genocide. There are many systematic issues that have us in the situation we are with being overrepresented in the unhoused community, overrepresented in our jails, in our prisons, and our social services. Many of us are one generation away from being a boarding school survivor. And many of the people that we see on the streets are one generation away. I'm actually fourth generation to be sent to those schools who, where their mission was to destroy the Indian, kill the man. And they brought about many types of abuse, physical, emotional, psychological, spiritual. They were designed to destroy us and to keep us in the condition we are now. But there's those of us fighting to change that. With that, it came mandatory removing children from their homes with threats and holding back food rations on what was called, they were prisoner of war camps that we now call reservations. There's 5 of them in North Dakota, and there's people coming here to survive, and there'll be more coming. Today we are seeing ongoing genocide in our jails. Luke Lattiser, a Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa veteran, died in custody in Cass County. He called the police for help on December 18th, 2020. And we have Shane Netterville, who was killed by the Fargo police with no accountability. We have Oscar Wilkie and Oscar Wilkie Jr., who died in custody in 2018. We can do better. Fargo has an opportunity to do better. And it was Pepcorn's response and not following through that encouraged me to come and speak, because I was born here in Fargo into homelessness with Fraser LTD. 3 generations of my family used
Tracy,
Fraser to
your time
survive.
is up. Your time is up. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like the genocide to stop.
Appreciate that. We're not ready for public hearing because it's not 5:15. So I think we could go to North Dakota State School College of Science. Rod Flanagan, if you're ready to go with your presentation. President, if you could bring up the people and introduce who else you might want to speak tonight, well, would be helpful. So we're just wondering what was happening with the Career Innovation Center that has been going and building in south side of Fargo. Commissioner Pepcorn was doing some drive-arounds to see all the different projects City of Fargo was involved with. And in talking to you, Rod, we thought this would be a good time to update the public and the commission what's happening. A lot of things went through the state last year to get funding and get things moving the right direction. I believe you're going to explain that to us today and kind of give the commissioners an update of what's happening. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Mahoney, commissioners. It's a pleasure to be here with you this evening. I've not had the pleasure to meet many of you, but it's been great to be here. I've been at NDSCS now, this is my 2nd year. It's been a great experience. I love our institution and what we do. So with me, I have Kim Nelson. She is our executive director of the NDSCS Foundation. As you may know, the foundation is the instrument by which we have acquired and the building, the land, and so forth. And so I'm going to Kim has put together a presentation for you here. She's going to walk through this. I'm here to help her. If you have any questions, please reach out, tell us, ask us. So,
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to share with you. We're excited about this project, and so there's new administration, there's new people on the commission, so I thought what I would do is start out with a just kind of a, I'm going to go through this quickly. There's quite a few slides, but I'm going to go through it fairly quickly and bring everybody up to date so we're all on the same page. So I don't know who's doing the clicker, but go ahead. So original intent, in 2018, the Workforce Academy, the concept was introduced to Cass County. The intent was to design a public-private partnership that would provide all Cass County K through 14 students an incumbent workforce, a curriculum to prepare them for successful careers. The academy would help alleviate long-term workforce shortage in the region and help continue to grow the community and thrive. The intent was to provide exposure to multiple career paths for all levels in K through 14. The intent was to present more opportunities for students to sample and experiment with a variety of careers. The intent was to provide appropriate facilities and equipment for hands-on training, and the intent was also to focus on the region's workforce and employment. When we presented all of this back in 2018, this came from the pamphlets and the brochures that were handed out at that time. So how are we going to get this done? The intent was to develop curriculum with K through 12 that would ultimately lead to additional associate degrees in the region. The intent was to have initial focus on these sectors: allied health, manufacturing, agriculture, technology, construction, transportation, business, arts, and communication. It was also the intent to emphasize place on project-based learning, specialized student support services, and identifying the unique needs of students of all ages, as well as continued support in student success. Who was going to be involved? The consortium was formed for K-12 school districts, so Fargo, West Fargo, Northern Cass, and Central Cass were all a part of it, along with NDSCS and the business and industry, all with the common goal to combine the resources and pursue a career academy, which now we refer to as the Career Innovation Center. So what has changed? Nothing. The intent is still the same. The Workforce Academy, now the CIC's vision statement then and now is still to build awareness in multiple career clusters. We talk about clusters when we're building in this, and you'll see this further down the road here. Necessary for career ready through experimental education, classroom training, student connection to business and industry, career path counseling. It will present real-time experiences by responding and adapting quickly to industry demands and student interests. Success will depend on engaged student interest and on the collaboration of all the stakeholders. Timeline of events. I'm not going to read all of this, but we had groundbreaking in July of 21. Public-private funds of $18.2 million was raised because that was the dollar amount that was needed for a match for a grant. Dr. Jonas, CTE director, and Dr. Dane Bagnes-Frisch at the time with the college co-wrote a grant for federal funding for the total of $10 million. Between January of 21 and June of 22, conversations around the release of those funds from the feds and the ownership of the building and who could accept the money was all being discussed between all of those entities and the state of North Dakota because the money was needed to go to a K-12 school. The language in the state of North Dakota stated that the foundation wasn't a K-12. It's obviously not a K-12, and in the foundation of a college being the owner, we needed to have that wording changed. So that caused delays, but during the 68th legislative session, a group came together and we figured out how to get the language so that it can be written so that a foundation can be a part of any of the career and technical education centers that are being built around the state of North Dakota. So that's not just us, but any of the schools K through 12 across the state now can have a foundation help them out. So timeline continues. Fast forward, August 4th of 23, just this year, the federal funds were released. The CTE program agreement was signed between the foundation, C3 Tech, which is the 4 schools or consortium schools, ND, North Dakota Career and Tech Education, and it was approved for the 10 million plus an additional 3 million in matching inflationary dollars. Today, as we speak, the core and shell of the north half of this facility is being built and has been erected. The core and shell of the south half is slated to start this month, raising the Butler portion of the building. In fact, they should be starting in the next couple of weeks. The architect, RLE, who came into the project midstream, has been working very diligently with all spring and summer and very closely with Dr. Flanagan and Dr. Lisa Karsh from NDSCS, Dr. Denise Jonas from the C3 Tech, and the foundation to design the interior fit up of this project and to come to a conclusion on what that scope is going to look like. The structural designs and the plans will be put in place by December of 2023, with bids going out in January of 24 and accepted no later than February 29th of 24. So what will this look like? The renderings are a quick glance. This is not final. Please note, this is not final, but this is hot off the press. This is what our next stages will look like. This is what the Career Innovation Center will look like. So the first is the drawing of the outside. This is with the design for the outside of the building. There's a lot of green space. The green plots are green space, but the brown is what the structure of the building will look like. The north half of the building is 3 stories and the south half is 1 story. And you'll see the next 2 slides are just basically drawings from RLE I don't know, you can go on to the next one. This one and the next one are drawings from RLE, just showing that we are in the process of making sure all of those needs are being met, all the programming is being met. If you want to just go ahead and kind of flip through, the next few slides here are going to show you what this wow factor is going to look like for us. Again, this is just, we've got a few tweaks that we've made in some of the clusters. Each of those little things represent a cluster of career and tech. We've made some changes in some coloring and some things like that, but basically this is kind of what the concept, what the inside will look like, what the building will be designed to make sure it looks like a career innovation center, not a high school, and not a boring school. We want it to be fun and exciting and wow. And we want kids to want to come there. Next few drawings are just giving you an idea of what a cluster might look like. A cluster for health and sciences. It'll have labs. It'll have classroom space. It'll have simulators. It'll have areas where they will hands-on be trained. And I just threw in a few. I didn't throw in all of them.
So if I could speak to just a couple things. Going back a slide, you'll see. So giving credit where credit is due, Dr. Jonas and her colleague Ryan Pierce have worked really hard at kind of designing, imagining some of these CTE spaces, career and technical education. So in this space, we will have construction, manufacturing, and ag. Within the manufacturing space, it's hard to see there, I know, but we will have labs, a welding lab. We will have a lab for automation, mechatronics, robotics, and we will have yet another lab for rapid prototyping, 3D printing, precision machining, and all of these things will be highlighted, and we will infuse these manufacturing spaces with concepts in IIoT, that's the Industrial Internet of Things, and Industry 4.0 principles. And it's going to be a really new, innovative, and I think it's going to be an amazing space. And so this is all this is the southern half of the building that Kim mentioned, that we were waiting on the federal money to show up to help us move forward. That's what all of this is.
And then the construction was delayed for a while. Is it moving forward now?
Yeah.
Very much so, yes.
And when will the completion date be?
We're looking at August of 2025.
Okay.
Go ahead.
We hope it's before that so we have time to move in, but the
Yeah.
start date is August the 20th.
25, yeah. So is this still a good investment? Have there been hurdles? Do we have the best interests of the future workforce and the students in mind? Are we being good stewards of our financial obligations? The answer is still yes. The Career Innovation Center, we are currently have pledged 34 million. Wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah.
The amount that's paid in to date is almost 12 million. To be collected is about 22 million. In that 22 million, 13 of it is the grant and the inflationary dollar monies. EDA grant was 1.5 million, and pledges still out are 7 million. And those pledges were over a 5-year period, 5 to 6 year period of time. So we feel like our finances are in good standings. And if you look at it, really, that's a pretty big number. We have $259,000 that are a little bit behind, which is a very minimal amount. And we are working with those individuals right now, and that'll happen. So we open it up for questions. With us are Dr. Karsh, Vice President of NDSCS, Dr. Jonas, and Hugh Veit, our board representative for the foundation.
Commissioner Pepcorn, any questions?
Sure. So, Mr. Chair, the one thing I would encourage people to do is go back into our minutes from 7/13 of 20. And then the city of Fargo, we made a pledge. And I guess my question is our pledge, are we fully paid up, and how much was that? I guess that's my question for the staff, if anybody has that.
Mike will have that for us.
Good evening, Commissioners. In response to the question that Commissioner Pepcorn just raised, our pledge amount was $1.5 million, and we paid $900,000 to date. We have a remaining 2 years of $600,000, $300,000, and $300,000. And then I also included, just for background information, the Cass County investment as well as the City of West Fargo. It should be noted as well that Fueling Our Future, which was the joint community initiative, also pledged funds to this project as well. So I included that just for background, and then just want to thank our auditor's office staff for pulling all of the background material that then President Richmond shared with the commission back in 2020. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. And so the other question I had, so obviously you're going to have more bids that are going to come in. So have you already anticipated, obviously construction costs are more than they were. So how are you going to make up the difference?
So one of the things that we did do is with the scope and the plan, we have taken out a portion of the building, the original design. So we're not building that shell and core or the interior of that, but we still be able to manage all the programming Dr. Flanagan was talking about within that. The rest of it is the third floor. Right now is going to be a shell until we come up with the remaining dollars. And we are still working on fundraising. That will be an ongoing adventure. And we will continue to fundraise to new. We're hoping there's the excitement that there's some businesses that were never tapped into or locations that were never tapped into in private dollars back in 2018 when this started, and we'll continue with that process.
Commissioner Preston.
Yeah, this is an exciting project. It's really fun to get the update and see where you're going with it. I don't think you said anywhere, what is the student load that you can accommodate with the building?
I don't think we've determined that. As Kim stated, the size and the scope has changed. We're now not going to have a third floor. The scope of the CTE side has shrunk a little bit to get within our budget range. So I don't know that we have a good number to share with you.
Mr. Kolpak?
Yes, thank you for the update. My question is, I know a big component of this originally was working with employers in our community to identify their needs for workforce. Can you speak a little bit to that, please?
Well, I will tell you from the college perspective, and I suspect from the high school perspective. So maybe just to help you visualize this, the CTE part of the wing, that's the south part of the building, that's going to be primarily high school students run and operated. And so they'll be busing students in there. And so part of the answer to the previous commissioner, I don't know how many high school kids will be bused in. They're still trying to determine that. Part of it depends on scheduling and all of that. But one of the key components of all of our programs is that we have industry advisory councils. We're always meeting. For us, it's at least once every semester. We invite people from those specific industries into our facility to learn from them, to help. We share our curriculum with them and say, hey, what are we missing? What can we shore up? All of that kind of thing. But beyond that, we always encourage our faculty to reach out to local industry to stay sharp, to stay current in their specific discipline. So that's an ongoing request that we make of our faculty all the time.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much for the update.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We might sneak out there and take a look at it as it's going through construction. It'll be fun to see, but it's really great to see it continue to go.
Actually, October 11th, we have set a date now that we will have a tour, we'll have a meeting. So those of all of the city, the West Fargo, city commissions, Cass County, the constituents, our donors, will all be invited to that. So
That'd be great.
we'll keep you up to date. I'll get that out as soon as possible, so.
Thank you very much.
Would anyone like a hard copy of the presentation?
If you'd leave it with Kimber in the back, just so we have it in our office. Thank you very much, Rod. Number 31, public hearing. It's hearing on a dangerous building located at 1449 4th Avenue South. Sean Radnick to explain.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Tonight I'm here to present the single detached wood-framed garage structure at 1449 4th Avenue South. Like I said, it's a 20 by 24 single detached wood frame garage. It was constructed in 2016, and on the property, the taxes are up to date to 2021. There's extensive fire damage to the structure, missing and broken windows, compromised weatherproof surfaces, damaged and inoperable overhead doors. There's no water to the garage because there was never any water to it, and it appears to meet all 10 of the criteria that are in the ordinances for a dangerous building. Here's a timeline of the events so far. There was a fire reported in January of 2023, and we were alerted to a possible dangerous building in May of 2023. In July of 2023, we did the notice of dangerous building and sent it to the owner and posted the structure. And after that, we requested the public hearing at commission, where we are tonight. The notice of dangerous public hearing and stuff, an order to show cause letter went out on the 25th of last month, and we're here tonight just to take a look at it. Here are some pictures of the structure as it stands today. As you can see, there's extensive fire damage. The overhead door doesn't work. The man door possibly works, but it shouldn't be opened. There's extensive fire damage on the exterior of it, and it's very close proximity to the home. The owner of this structure has had insurance payouts sent to them, but they have not cashed the check or done any work to the structure. And the recommended motion is to deem it a dangerous building and have it removed on or before November 4th. And I'll stand for any questions.
Is there anyone present who wishes to speak to this building? Come to the mic, please.
Thank you. I know I spoke during the last meeting regarding the structure and the goings-on at that location, and thank you for sharing the photos.
Could
Many
you
of my
give your
neighbors-
name, please? I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry, it's Kathy Polanski.
Yeah.
Many of my neighbors and I work hard to maintain our homes and keep our yards tidy to retain and improve the value of our homes. I'm concerned that the garage in this current condition may affect the value of my property and that of my neighbors.
Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for your time. My name is Todd Gensinger. I live next door to the property at 1449 4th Avenue South. The reason I'm here is to ask the city for help in cleaning up the Jefferson Elementary neighborhood. I'll start by saying it's gotten to the point I don't feel safe in my own home or outside in my yard. I'd like to give you a little backstory of the property at 1449. It's basically a drug house and has been a known drug house for over 8 years. The first drug bust was in December 5th of 2016. The most recent drug bust was on August 23rd of 2022 for meth and fentanyl. There's a steady flow of people going in and out of the property at all hours of the day. It has gotten to the point where I had to put up security cameras. I've come home to people on my front deck, in my backyard. I've seen people sneaking through my backyard, jumping in front of the fence, and going to the neighbor's backyard at night. I have found garbage, backpacks, drug paraphernalia in my yard. On several occasions, I had to chase people out of my yard and have made several calls to the police department. On July 26, 2023, there was a garage fire at the property. The city has deemed it dangerous, and the residents have made little to no attempt to fix or clean up the garage, but still use the garage and have been seen going in and out of the garage. The house on the property is now deemed unsafe by the city, and like the garage, several people still live and have been seen going in and out of the property with little attempt to fix the property. Again, we'd like to thank you for your time and thank the city building inspectors for the help in this matter.
Is there anybody else wish to speak? We'll close the public hearing. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Colpack?
Aye.
Preston?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Yes. Thank you, Sean. Item 32, a public hearing, appeal of the Planning Commission decision on 8/1/23 to approve the conditional use permit that would allow a group living on SR4 single dwelling residential zoning district on Lot 7, Block 1, Golden Valley, Second Edition, 2545 69th Avenue South. Donald Crest to explain.
Evening, Commissioners. Donald Kress with the Department of Planning and Development. Just waiting for my PowerPoint here. Be a brief pause here. I'll start talking slowly. Commissioners, as the mayor has stated, item 32 is in Golden Valley Second Edition. This is something that does not come before your commission very often. It's an appeal of a conditional use permit granted by the Planning Commission. Oh, hey, there we are. Okay. There we are. This is a conditional use permit for group living in the SR4 single dwelling residential zone. It was granted by the Planning Commission on August 1st, 2023. The Planning Commission is the decision-making body for conditional use permits. There's a 10-day appeal period following the Planning Commission's decision on a CUP. Neighbors to the subject property appealed the decision within that time frame, which brings this matter before your commission. The appellants opposed the CUP for reasons stated in the staff report. I see some of the appellants are here tonight and may provide additional testimony. The CUP was was inspired by the applicant's plan to develop an agency foster home for adults. These facilities are provided for in state statutes and are licensed and regulated by the North Dakota Department of Health and Human Services. The definition of agency adult foster home is included in your packet and shown on the screen for your reference. The CUP was requested as Fargo's Land Development Code classifies any group of more than 3 persons not related by blood, marriage, adoption, or legal guardianship living together in a single dwelling unit as group living. So in this case, there could be, as the state statute says, up to 4
residents living here. And again, these residents here would have medical conditions such as stroke, traumatic brain injury, or dementia, and the applicant can probably tell you some more about that. And so group living, that is having these more than 3 unrelated people living in a single dwelling unit, is conditionally permitted in the SR4 zone. That is, a conditional use permit is required. So that's the background on how we got there. As the proposed adult foster care home could have a total of 4 residents, a CUP is required. They wouldn't always have 4 residents, but that's the maximum, so that triggers the requirement for the CUP. This property is located here on 2545 69th Avenue South. So actually Davies High School is right off the map here. Our close-up shows that. This is somewhat more developed. These aerial photos are a little bit old here. Here are a couple of photographs here from this morning. Here is the site under construction. This is 69th Avenue South. And then here you're looking westerly down 69th Avenue South. There are some more residences here, as you see. And also one of the comments that's listed in the staff report referred to construction behind. You can see the heavy equipment in the background here. That is Fulton Loop South that is under construction. And then the zoning here, as we stated, is SR4, single dwelling residential. Commissioners, the summary of the Planning Commission hearing is included in your staff report. Based on that and some concerns expressed by the Planning Commission, staff has proposed to add another condition in addition to the one that was approved by the Planning Commission for this CUP. And that one is shown here in the recommended motion, as stated in your staff report as well. The conditional use permit will not become effective until the city has granted a certificate of occupancy appropriate for group living use and until the North Dakota state requirements for agency adult foster homes have been met. So the state also inspects to comply with their regulations. The applicant, Gisela Shimwe, is with us this evening and may wish to address the commission. Representatives of the appellants are also here with us tonight. The recommendation is stated in your staff report and shown on the screen. That concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
It's a public hearing, so what I do first, those for this, if they would speak first, or the developers speak first, and then we'll have the opposition speak against, if that'd be okay. So can we start now with the developer or the group that's wanting to do this?
Good evening. My name is Giselle Nshimwe. I am an RN and I work in the ICU full-time at Essential Health. You're probably wondering, what is an agency adult foster home? It is a licensed home-like setting where residential habilitation and community support services can be provided up to patients, for patients. Just like Donald had mentioned, they may have dementia or went through a stroke, or they may have a brain injury in the past, not meaning that they cannot walk or not able to do things. Some people may come to us just needing help to get back on their feet. Everyone that comes to us, they will have to go through a screening and they'll have to meet the recommendation that's by the state, and they'll have to meet a skilled level of care, more like people who live in a nursing home, so they will not be able to drive on their own. They will need help at all times with certain things, but they can do some things on their own, like I said. The caregivers are not allowed to live on the site, so we'd have staff that will be there 24/7. Required that the home has a staff person there 24 hours per day unless the individual does not require this level of assistance. So some people may be able to do things on their own and they may not need us to be there 24 hours. So we might have to just pop in and out to help them with certain things. But again, it really depends on who we're gonna get and what they have going on and what help they need in any way. There'll be different shifts that would have to be designated for every staff that's gonna come in. So the house consists with 5 bedrooms. One would be an office, just so we can keep confidential documents and things needed. Would have 2 living rooms, one upstairs. Downstairs, we have a laundry room. Upstairs, we have a kitchen. Would work on hand with the state, and we've been doing that ever since the beginning of the year. This is a project that we started at the beginning of the year until now. So it's been ongoing. I would work with the case management hand to hand. They'll be the one even assigning the individuals that we're gonna get In order for people to come to us, they would have to come and look at the home. They would have to like the home. They would have to pretty much, they have a choice. It's not like they'll get somebody and be like, go there and live there. That's not how it works. There's a long process through it. And would also meet the individual and see if they fit the needs that we can provide at the home as well. And everyone has been going through training. Right now, it's me and my sister that have been doing most of the stuff. We've gone through all the education that's required for us to open the agency. We have completed the certifications. We've done the background checks and everything needed. Right now, we've been kind of in between with permit zoning, and construction has had to stop a little bit because there's certain things they're looking into. So it's kind of hard walking by or driving by knowing that everything seems kind of stopped from going on. We're supposed to close the home August 8th. So now it's to be determined by today if the project has to keep going on and when we can finish it. Transportation-wise, a lot of people were wondering what's gonna happen. It's a small place. Where are people gonna park? The residents gonna have a car? Well, these individuals are through Medicaid. For the most part, would have to drive them around, help them with transportation if they need to go to therapy, hospital, appointments, go grocery shopping, would have to help them with that. So with that, would either could get a transit system to help them get around to where they need to be with the stuff. And sometimes family members can come over because it's their family, just like anywhere else, they would come and visit. So they could come and park outside. Also, our staff that would be working that day, they would park outside. And also the state does come regularly to make sure we're doing the job that we need to be doing, to make sure everything is good. So they would stop by and park as well. There are more homes like this. You may be wondering, is this the first home being built? How come this has gone on for so long? But we do have some homes in Jamestown, Mohall, Leeds, Bismarck, Mandan. We have another home in Horace currently and in West Fargo. I cannot really speak for those homes because they have their own regulations in their cities. And you may be wondering, if they did not permit a zoning permit in West Fargo or Horace, how come you need one? Well, I asked myself the same question. If I knew West Fargo did not need it, I probably could have gone to West Fargo and started this project there. But before I even started, I spoke to everyone that I needed to speak with in order to proceed with it. And I felt like I knew the way to go about things. I knew how everything was going to work out. So I thought I had it all together until now, and we kind of feel stuck. Why is the zoning permit important for me? Currently, the zoning permit, it seems like it's the key to open the door for a place to call home, to open up. Currently, we had to stop construction. We could have finished it, like I said, August 8th, but now everything seems to be determined. We are ready to move forward and keep it going. This project has been going, like I said, since the beginning of the year. The year is almost over, and I would really like to finish what I have started. And this is a dream for me. And also, there were a few questions that were asked about property values. Could this home be still sold if we were to build it? Well, this home could still be sold as a single-family home, but more desirable because of the size and the features that comes with it. Value, there are similar permitted homes that exist only a few blocks away. MLS data shows that for similar co-ops, home values in the neighborhood have actually increased slightly, faster than the city average. Since January 21st, similar sized homes have increased from 310K to 371K, and it has increased of 20%. Same time, and comps in Fargo have increased only 18%, not even immediately apparent when driving by. I know there are questions about the heavy construction. Majority of the work mentioned will be finished or nearly finished by the time residents would be moved in. And it's a long process, like I said. Even though we can finish even the home next month, it doesn't mean we're gonna get somebody tomorrow or the next day. And I cannot do private pay. This has to go through Medicaid as well. It's not like I can go and just pick an individual and be like, oh, I have a home, come in. And we'll not let anyone in the house that's not permitted to be in. It's just the residents and the staff that needs to be in. Also, security features will be in place in their house as needed. We're gonna add a ramp outside. That's the plan for non-ambulatory individuals. Like most of the features in their house are already fixated. The bathroom, it's already there for non-ambulatory people. Everything is within reach that's needed to be done, the way it needs to be done. Emergency services, I am an RN myself. I have experienced a lot of things. I have experienced during nursing home. I've worked in hospitals, home health as well. My sister, currently she's not here, she was supposed to come, and Heather was supposed to come as well. But my sister also worked in a home health care, and she has experience in that area as well. So the individuals will be in good hands with experience that we have within our belt, under our belt. And there were questions about an ambulance coming by if needed. The house is accessible via 2 different roads and very close to Major Road on 25th Street. And also traffic. Most residents will not be driving, like I said, and the house has an attached garage and a driveway parking if needed to park. Location for business or use. This is meant to be a home. It will look and feel and act like a home, and that's why I named it a place to call home. It's not supposed to be a nursing home. It's not supposed to be a group home. This is supposed to feel like a home. When an individual come in, they're supposed to feel like they're still in their home. There are a lot of people that I encounter while working that they're in the mid-30s, 40s, and all of a sudden they get a stroke, and all of a sudden they cannot go back home. And I've seen how hard it is for them. And it's like, I want to go back home. I don't want to go to a nursing home. I don't want to go to no group home. I want to go home. But if we have a place like this where it feels like home, it's still in a neighborhood where it feels like home, this would mean to somebody. Like I'm doing this for somebody who needs it, because I've seen people who need a place like it. And the developer gave us approval before construction ever began to do this. And I've spoken hand to hand with the state even until this morning about everything that's going on. The community would benefit. This home provides a wonderful and much needed services for the residents. State monitoring ensures the home will be maintained in a high level. The good, reliable neighbors rather than a random buyer. And like I was saying, like the other homes in West Fargo, they may not have had a permit for the zoning, and the neighbors probably never knew it even opened. But we've been honest from the beginning what we're about to do in this neighborhood. There are homes like it out there. I know it's new. I know it's hard on everybody, but we're doing it for a good cause, not for a bad cause. And it's been a great exposure for the neighborhood families and residents to a variety of people for different ages and abilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else who is speaking for? Are there some people who'd like to speak against?
Thank you. I'm Corey Jacobson. I am the treasurer of the Golden Valley Homeowners Association. In our appeal letter, I believe that we firmly stated that this approval goes directly against the covenants in which the developer has placed on the plats of land within Golden Valley within Golden Valley Second Edition, First Edition, as well as Third Edition, and soon to be Fifth Edition, which is the Fulton Street that Mr. Kress had laid out earlier. So we will be, our board will be overseeing all of them. This was the first time I actually saw the PUC code. I'm sorry, the Century Code that outlined, if you can go back to that, please, Don, I appreciate it. Yeah, so the Century Code that outlines, it's regularly provided by professional staff trained to provide services to older adults or adults with disability to 4 or fewer adults who are not related by blood or marriage to the owner or lessee for hire or compensation. That's the first time I've saw that, and I found that extremely interesting, as our covenants state these homes are to be occupied by a family. And in our appeal letter, we demonstrated those covenants to you, in which the family is referred to a single housekeeping unit. It shall be, and it shall exclude a group or groups of 4 persons where 3 or more persons thereof are not related by blood, adoption, or marriage. So the covenants are directly related to this Century Code right here. and that is why they go against this conditional use permit. Now, I know that the city doesn't get involved or doesn't police issues with homeowners associations and covenants. However, the city has allowed the developer to place these restrictions on our land, on the plats within these subdivisions where you have approved, in the first part, where you approve this business to go. And as the board, we are required to uphold these covenants. We did not choose them either. The developer chose them for us, but our job is to uphold them. And we believe they go against the covenants, and that we will have to work with the applicant on that. So I think the best course of action is for the board to deny this conditional use of permit until the applicant can work with the neighborhood and the Golden Valley Board to change the covenants, which would allow this type of business to be placed within this land. And then from there, reapply for the conditional use permit. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Mike Strobel, also part of the Golden Valley Homeowners Association. I guess, like Corey had said too, the family, that is the biggest thing. I know when we did the appeal for that permit was the biggest thing that we wanted to point out. I guess a couple of things that I wanted to just say is that I just don't know how well the planning was going for this person trying to get this this home. She keeps talking about the first of the year starting it, but when we had the city planning meeting in August 1st, that was when they first brought up to change to request the zoning code to be changed. And I know a couple of the city planning members were kind of questioning Donald on why it took so long to get that brought up, when again, that was August 1st. She stated that August 8th, the house was supposed to be done. So I just think there's a lot of things that maybe she's trying to do it right, but I just think that there's a lot of things that she's didn't plan out real well, and that makes me concerned for the future, like what was going to happen and things too. Let's see here. Talking about the real estate value, I'm a real estate agent in town as well. I guess the biggest thing right now is that development there's really no houses in that area. When they sent out that the first letter to see who can come to the meeting, there was only two occupied homes in that area. So I think the biggest thing is going to be once this house, if it does go through, once this house is there, it's going to be hard to sell the lots next to it, because I don't think many people would want to live next to something like that. And I think that's about it. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Mayor Mahoney and the commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. My name is Edie Holcomb, and I am the homeowner at 2561 69th Avenue South, the nearest residence to the property, which Mr. Kress is showing you there on the screen. After last month's City Planning Commission meeting, I overheard a comment about the old lady and her nosy neighbors who were here, so I sign up, that would be me. The petitioner described a dream that she has had for this property. And in my appeal at the Planning Commission, I stayed very objective and non-personal, but I'm going to describe the dream that I had for my home there and how it's been impacted by city actions. And I would ask you to consider whether any of this feels right to you. As my husband, who is 10 years my senior, faced issues of aging, we looked for a home with no stairs, little maintenance, and an HOA to handle things like mowing and plowing and safeguard the quality of life in the neighborhood. We obtained and read the covenants just mentioned and proceeded with our purchase. We immediately encountered problems lining up the city garbage pickup because we were told that there is no house at that address. When I pointed out that I was sleeping in it, the further responses from another city department was that there was not to be any building there at all until a storm sewer was put in. Several months after our purchase, we were notified of an easement along the rear of our lot for a storm sewer that was to have been installed in August, but has not yet been, and yet more homes are being built in spite of the lack of an infrastructure that was considered necessary. Does this seem right? Meanwhile, still without the infrastructure in place, additional houses were being built. 2 were immediately next door to mine on both sides of me. One of them that you can see second in the background there, and then the home we're talking about now. Because I am retired and at home, I was able to observe. Some days in the summer were so hot I would take ice water and cookies over to the workers because I felt sorry for them, and would ask about the work they were doing, and was consistently told it's a 3-bedroom family home with an 8-foot basement. This went on for several months, and each contractor who worked at the property said this is a single-family home with an 8-foot basement. Then suddenly at the 11th hour, we received notification that the real plan for this building on Lot 7 had actually been going on since February, according to the petitioner, and was scheduled to open in September. Does this subterfuge seem right to you? As this process was unfolding, my husband's health was declining, and our dream to live independently for 3 to 5 more years was evaporating. I had to move him to assisted living in June, and of course, his health is not the city's issue. But the property value of my home as an avenue to provide for his care is within the city's purview. And the pattern of inserting a business like this into a residential neighborhood, lowering property values and slowing sales development, is widely known. As I commented at the commission on August 1st, I have experience with group homes such as this in existing neighborhoods due to my mother's own journey in her last years. Conflicts with the neighborhood arose as parking and traffic issues emerged for caregivers, visitors, and other providers. As you look at the street, you notice it is 2 lanes with very little room for any parking. And throughout this construction process, it has been difficult, if there's been construction vehicles, to get through the road. And if you have the number of different people coming that were mentioned, this would continue to become very difficult. Safety issues are also present, I believe, for the residents themselves. This site is 1 lot away from 25th Street, a very busy north-south arterial, driven by hasty commuters and inexperienced teenage drivers headed for Davies High School. The house itself, if you notice the front porch, gives no appearance of the mobility and accessibility needs of those that are described as being served. Does a room in an 8-foot basement with a window well for light seem such an ideal setting for someone suffering from traumatic brain injury, for example? The media frequently report that Fargo needs more residential housing. Why stifle family housing by inserting group homes instead? Does this seem right to you? Such facilities may be needed in the scope of Fargo development, but it seems to me that the city should be proactive in planning and designating locations for such businesses, and they are businesses, not having them pop up next to property owners who already purchased their homes in full faith that they would be treated fairly, that their HOA covenants would be respected, and that their property would appreciate. Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, I ask you to please deny this conditional use permit. It may be technically legal, but the process and the impact on existing property owners is just not right.
Anybody else? Close public hearing. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I will move to approve the recommended motion, and then I would like to say a few things.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion.
So Donald, I just have a question for you, and then
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to say something. So the whole issue of why this is in front of us is because SR4 does not allow for unrelated residents? Is that why?
Well, yeah, basically, yes. None of the residential zones, okay, let me back up here. Group living is defined as 3 or more unrelated people living in a single residential unit.
Okay.
That is a conditional use in all of the single dwelling residential zones. So if you have a conditional use permit, you can do it, but if you don't have one, you can't.
So if someone has a college-age student as a child and 2 other college-age students are living with them, that wouldn't be allowed with SR4?
So there would be more than three unrelated, they have to be more than three unrelated people.
Three, then.
Yeah, okay. So,
Okay,
yes.
okay, that's helpful to understand.
Thank you.
So, I think, I don't know if very many people know this, but I was in the business of owning or running a business for services delivered in people's homes. And I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there will be a staff person there. So there will be two vehicles probably when staff are turning over. And certainly, if there's some services that are coming in to help, like physical therapy or whatever. So the parking situation just does not seem like a real big issue here, in my mind, anyway. We are really trying, and within the healthcare industry, trying to integrate disabled individuals into the community. And this has been happening for a long time with the young disabled. I lived a block away from a young disabled group home, and it was just fine. There was no problem with that, and it was actually located right on 25th Street, which is a busy street, as you had indicated. So that, in my mind, is not, a real large issue either. I do think also that as we move forward, and correct me if I'm wrong, we are not in the position to implement or enforce HOA kind of regulations, are we? We are here just to talk about the.
Yes, ma'am, we are focused on the
Yeah.
land use permit that the Land Development Code grants your commission authority to approve.
Okay, so that is the reason, those are the reasons that I am actually supportive of this, as well as we are trying to, as much as possible, create neighborhoods where there's a mixture of age, a diversity in income, a diversity in, many, many different ways. So this is one step towards that, I think.
Commissioner Kolpak.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, Giselle, I commend you in your profession and wanting to help folks of all abilities. I also believe that longer term, people with different abilities have the right to live in neighborhoods in a home. Having said that, I struggle with this one because it seems like we don't have enough information yet about the impacts. And part of that work is coming from the work we're doing with the growth plan that is currently underway and being studied. And there were some vague statements throughout the materials in the packet that just, for me, there are too many unanswered questions. So while longer term, I certainly support it, I feel like I don't have enough information tonight to support the staff recommendation and the Planning Commission recommendation.
Commissioner Strand.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd be curious, what are the alternatives to this type of housing? If these folks with these needs can't get placed into a neighborhood, where can they go? Is anybody able to answer that, or? Okay, I'll answer it myself. They deserve to live in homes and neighborhoods. We've gotten away from institutions, and I have my own history with institutions. And thank goodness, that's not our options only. We need to have people to be placed in homes, in neighborhoods, in the least restrictive environments possible. We may not like who's living next to us, but someday it might be me, it might be one of us with special needs. I don't know. And I can understand neighbors being surprised and not seeing what's coming their way, but I don't know what the options are that are better.
Commissioner Pepcorn.
So, Mr. Chair, I have a son with challenges, and so actually someday soon, he'll probably be living in one of these homes. But one of the things about this, it just seems like we're trying to do a lot of these things that should have been done a long time ago. And so to me, it just feels like this we support, like John said, we want them to be in neighborhoods, but you also have to follow the right order. And it seems to me like this, but to give you an example, what jumps out at me is there is no accessibility in this house. I mean, if you look at the front, I got a ramp at my house, there's no ramp. I mean, that's the first thing. And then if you have a basement, well, you have to have an elevator. I don't believe this has an elevator. And so to me, the accessibility of this house, it just seems like this doesn't really seem like it was well thought out. And so I support, like John said, we want to have everybody have access to the neighborhoods. That's what we're all about. But you also have to do it the correct way. And it just seems to me like this was not, it's kind of being done at the end. That's just my perception. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So out of the housing study, one of the needs we have in the community is supportive housing, and that's one of the difficulties I think the commission is wrestling with right now, is that oftentimes when you're looking for areas in the community that's going to happen, we're not looking for big group homes, we're looking for 3 to 4 people. And I think that's a difficulty we're having with this, but like Commissioner Pepcorn says, you have to have accessibility. I think you did mention you are going to make accessibility, so that will be taken care of, but it is to the neighbors who didn't know this was coming, it's a surprise. To the neighbors that are building after this, it won't be a surprise because that would be in the neighborhood. You did mention that the neighborhood association would meet and then maybe consider it. Yeah, I'm curious about that, because would that be a consideration with conditions, or would that be a discussion? I don't quite know. Could I just ask that question? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate that. So we would call a special meeting of the neighborhood and ask for 60% of the vote if the neighborhood agrees to change the covenants. As I stated earlier.
So it wouldn't be the board, it'd be the neighborhood that would vote on it.
Yeah, the board cannot approve this. We have to have the neighborhood change the covenants. Our only duty is to uphold the neighborhood. And if I could just say, can I say one more thing, please, sir? She said something that really hit home to me. She said they have a group home like this in Leeds. I grew up in Leeds. My father has Alzheimer's, and he will be in that group home in Leeds, and I'm extremely thankful for that. And in no way against something like this in neighborhoods. What we need to do is, as Commissioner Pepcorn stated out, we need to plan better. We need to not allow the developer to place that type of restriction and then give homeowners who buy into that land the false belief of what they're going to get, and then change that on them by going against that. And we would obviously completely meet and work, but it's up to the neighborhood. It's up to them to vote on this and change the covenants. And that's all we can do.
Commissioner Preston.
Mr. Chairman, I would just say that if the developer has been misleading someone, that's, in my mind, not the question that we have in front of us. The question we have in front of us is truly just, the CUP. So, again, we're not here to enforce what the homeowners association or what the developer might have told you, and it's unfortunate, that's for sure. But that's an issue that I think you need to take up with the developer.
Any other discussion?
Can I just, Mr. Chairman, can I ask, if you don't mind me asking, so does it have accessibility in the house? Like I said, it doesn't have ramps in the front, and are you going to have an elevator? Can you talk a little bit about that? I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
So inside of the house, it only consists of like 14 stairs. So with the 14 stairs, we're adding a stair lift to be able to go down, a stair lift. And then Jodelle currently is working on their home still, but we are working with Luxury Bath. But then they come in after Jodelle is done doing that portion. They're gonna add a ramp outside, and that's already planned. It's been planned from a long time ago. Okay. It's just we had to let Jodelle do their job, and then they come in and do and finish up what they have to do. So it's already in place that we're gonna add accessibility, the rest of the accessibility needed. But construction right now, as you guys can see, has stopped for a while. We haven't been doing anything to the house because we had to have the fire sprinklers and all that stuff in the inside of the walls.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Roll call vote, please.
Preston? Strand?
Yes.
Kolpak?
No.
Pepcorn?
No.
Mahoney?
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Item 34, project update to Main Avenue from University Drive to 25th Street. Jeremy Gordon to explain.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I'll just give a quick intro in the interest of time. This is an informational item for you for the Main Avenue street reconstruction from University Drive to 25th Street. We've been at this project, studying it, looking at it. We met with you nearly a year ago. In that time, it's gone from one type of an environmental document to an environmental assessment. That adds time. We look at a lot more items in an environmental assessment. There's this is a project that we're working in collaboration with DOT and MetroCog, and we do have members of those organizations with us if you have any questions for them. Matt Kinsella with Apex Engineering and Jake Nordic is here with SRF to go through a PowerPoint presentation. They'll unearth all that you haven't seen in the last year. It's a very thorough examination we're going through on Main Avenue. We've got one alternative west of 18th Street and 4 alternatives east of 18th Street. So with that, I'll hand it over to them, and I'll be up here for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Jeremy, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, for the chance to update you on this project today. I think looks like we're getting the PowerPoint up here, so we're about ready to go. So we were in front of the commission about a year ago. I think it was September of 22 that we spoke to you about this project. And like Jeremy said, we wanted to update you on what we've been doing since then and where we're hoping to go here in the next few months. So if we can get this to advance here. There we go.
Do you need me to?
Is it I might need somebody. I might need technical assistance. So I'm trying the mouse, and okay, it looks like we're making it now. So Jeremy introduced us, so I kind of skipped over that slide. But we do have a large group we're working with. Our project review committee has been instrumental to development of this project. Won't go through all the names here on the list, but as you can see, there's a lot of agencies and the city, of course, and the DOT represented here. So just a quick synopsis here of our timeline. What you're looking at here is really the 3 phases that we have on these type of projects. In blue, you have the preliminary design and environmental clearance. Then we usually move into final design and then construction, of course, after that. So on the far left, we started this project back in November of 2021. And we spent that first year working through preliminary design, environmental work, looking at some of the impacts. We presented to Commission, as I mentioned, last September, also presented to DOT management, had a public meeting in October, and then the team kind of stepped back at that point because, as Jake will mention here in a minute when we go through alternatives, we do have a couple of alternatives that impact quite a few buildings on the corridor. And we wanted to make sure that we were doing justice to gathering the information for those impacts and making sure that we were going to be able to give decision makers like yourself the information that you need to make an informed decision. So bottom line on that is that we stepped back and we decided to do an environmental assessment for this project, which is basically just elevating that environmental clearance process a little bit more, to a little bit more detail. And of course, that takes a little bit more time. So we started that up in February. We've been working on that for the last 6 months. And the goal is to get that completed in February and move into design. So that's really where we're trying to go. And I'll bring this back up at the end again, and we can talk a little bit more about some of the next steps from there. So just to orient everybody on the project area and where we're talking about with this project. So this map shows the 4 miles of Main Avenue, or US Highway 10 is also known as, within the city of Fargo. And of course, in purple, you have the project that was done a couple of years ago, the downtown project, the mile stretch there from University to 2nd Street. The project that we're talking about today with you is between 25th Street and University Drive. It's the project shown in light blue. So as we look at those 4 miles, it's kind of an interesting variety of lane configurations and contexts that you see. So we just wanted to review that really quickly here too. So on the top, we're looking at the 2 miles from 45th Street to 25th Street. And that is completely a 6-lane section west of 25th Street. Of course, you go across the interstate, extending out to city limits at 45th Street. When you go to the east of the project area that we're talking about today, the section that was just rebuilt, as many of you know, that was rebuilt to more of a hybrid section. We have some of it is a 5-lane, some of it is a 4-lane you can see, and then 3-lane towards the east. So this definitely came into play with our project review committee to consider this context as we were looking at different alternatives. The other interesting thing about this corridor when compared to some of those other segments is we have a very tight right-of-way on this corridor. East of 18th Street, which is really the focus of what we're going to be talking about with you today, is that area east of 18th Street. There's only 60 feet of right-of-way on the corridor. And a lot of times there's buildings built right up to that 60-foot line. As you can see in this case, sometimes we have buildings on both sides, and it's literally 60 feet in between the buildings, not just the right-of-way. So again, that was a factor as we work through development of alternatives. When we start these projects, we always spend a lot of time working with the team on the purpose and need, essentially the why and the what. Why are we doing this? What needs to be done? And it really boils down to these 4 elements that are listed on the screen. And I wanted to highlight bullets 2 and 3 for the commission. These are really important items that we've worked on quite a bit. Improving the pedestrian environment in that corridor is something that anyone that's walked in that corridor can probably recognize the importance of doing that. We've got a picture on the lower left there that shows a sidewalk that's going by the International Market Plaza building there. The amount of width that you have to use there obviously does not meet accessibility standards and does not create a comfortable environment to walk in. The other thing that we're trying to do as well is close and consolidate access points where we can. The picture on the right here shows an example. We have about 5 driveways within 200 feet there. You can see the curb barely gets back up and then it's back down. And we have 80 driveways within this 1 mile stretch. So that was something that we really looked hard at as well. We spent a lot of time with the commission a year ago going through the traffic analysis. We're not going to do that again today, but I wanted to highlight a few of the key findings from that analysis. On the top, the first bullet, current capacity is adequate, meaning that we don't need to expand this corridor for vehicles. We don't need to add lanes, add through lanes to create more capacity. It's adequate for 2045 traffic. That being said, the other thing that we looked at is if we keep that capacity west of 18th Street, so keep the 5-lane section that's out there now, but we look at some other options east of 18th Street where we have that tight right-of-way, that also does provide acceptable level of service. So we were able to look at some of those other types of sections in that stretch, and Jake will talk about that here in a minute. And then from a crash standpoint, there really wasn't anything from the crash history that stood out as any immediate safety need, but it's definitely something we're keeping in mind, of course, as we're going through alternative development. And then I mentioned the access points already, so I don't need to belabor that point. But with that, I will turn it over to Jake.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Mahoney and the rest of the commission. So what our alternatives that we're going to be talking about here today do address is those purpose and need points that Matt alluded to as part of the need for this project. And all alternatives that we'll be discussing here today do include that 5-lane section west of 18th, so that does not change as far as the amount of lanes. It's just reconstruction of that portion to better improve the pedestrian environment as well as the aging infrastructure, both the pavement and the underground. Across the entire corridor, that pedestrian environment will be improved, ADA compliance will be met. We will be discussing the alternatives of adding a continuous center left turn lane between 18th and University. So really the number of lanes aren't going to change much with some of them, it's just how those lanes are utilized. And then also the sidewalk replacement, there's nearly 8,000 feet of sidewalk that'll be reconstructed for improvements. We are going to be changing the amount of lanes, like I said, between that stretch between 18th and University with one westbound lane. So a reduction of one lane, basically utilizing one of those lanes for that center turn lane. And then again, the access management improvements that we've been working with the property owners along the corridor, as well as replacing the underground utilities.
Mayor, might I ask a question? I'm trying to visualize 18th Street over to University. There aren't really many north exits, are there?
No, that's correct. Yeah, all the side streets go to the south.
So why do we build in a continuous turn lane to go nowhere if there aren't any north turns to speak of?
Part of that, the answer to part of that question is those 80 accesses that we mentioned before. There is a lot of driveways, a lot of businesses, properties to be accessed. So even though there aren't those intersections going to the north, there's still people making those left turns to get into some of those properties that are on the north side. What we found in some of the crash analysis is that a lot of the crashes were rear end collisions from people backing up in the lane the left turn lane, because people are trying to make a turn and people backing up. So that was something that came out that was an improvement, to add that turn lane.
Yeah, and some of the businesses on the north side are the international market and the new Asian market that are on the north side there. So there's a lot of access that is happening, turning to the north to access those properties. We did look at design standards, so all the alternatives will be meeting current DOT and federal design standards when it comes to lane widths, sidewalks, and boulevards. And we are shooting for a minimum of a 6-foot sidewalk with most of the alternatives. There are some constraints, obviously, with the reduced right-of-way width to meet that, but that is our goal. And then we also providing a boulevard between the driving lanes and the sidewalk. So here's just a synopsis of the alternatives that we'll be talking about here today. Alternative A is a no build. That's just one of the alternatives that has to be evaluated. It is a decision item to do nothing. Obviously that doesn't meet the needs, the purpose and the need of the project. But we do have 4 other alternatives, and they are broken out by the number of lanes that they do represent. And then there are some other options that could be added on to these that we'll discuss as well. So again, the no build, same lane configurations. As you can see, there's no center turn lane between 18th and University. It's really do nothing, no improvements. As I said before, the 23rd, we're calling it 23rd Street because that's where the improvements really stop. It doesn't go all the way to 25th Street, but 23rd to 18th. The lane configurations stay the same as they do today. Everything will be reconstructed to improve the life of the corridor, as well as improve the ADA accessibility with the pedestrian environment. And all alternatives will use that, so there's really no alternatives from 23rd or 25th to 18th. That is just the improvements that are going to be moving forward with it. So all the focus of the discussion will be on 18th to University. We did provide some visualization, so this is between 23rd and 18th, the 5-lane section. We'll just run this here. So as you can see, the improvements to the pedestrian environment with the boulevards, the sidewalks, we do have some opportunity for some aesthetic treatments, such as some tree plantings, aesthetics, improvements to the lights out along the corridor as well. You can move to the next slide. Okay, now getting to the alternatives between 18th and University. Alternative C1 is a 4-lane, so that's 2 eastbound lanes, 1 westbound lane, and then a center turn lane. With this alternative, we are maximizing that right-of-way width. So right now out there is 60 feet. We're looking at adding an additional 5 feet to both the north and the south to help create that pedestrian environment, that 4-foot boulevard, 6-foot sidewalk. So that's 10 feet from the back curb to that right-of-way line. And with this alternative, this is where the building impacts do come into play. There are 7 buildings that are impacted, as well as
right-of-way takings along the entire corridor to increase that right-of-way width from 60 to 70 feet. And this is what that would look like. You have your 2 lanes heading to the east, a center turn lane, and then the 1 westbound lane. As you can see, there's a building impact there to the south. Again, still improving that pedestrian environment along there. There's more building impacts to the north there, as you can see at that pinch point where we have the 2 properties abutting the existing right-of-way. So the same alternative, only with a realignment to avoid one of the building impacts. With one of those building impacts at the international market, which houses a number of businesses that would be severely impacted with the previous alternative. So we did look at realigning, doing some realigning to avoid impacts to that building itself. So we would reduce one building impact. We would maintain everything else that alternative C1 originally does include. And here's just a drawing. We don't have a schematic of it, a visualization of it, because it's been a recent addition. This is one you have not seen before from last year. So we do move the alignment further to the south to avoid the international market. Again, that does impact a little bit more right-of-way needed on the south end a little bit, but it does remove one of the building impacts along the corridor. Now, alternative C2, same lane configuration. We are going to be modifying the design criteria to create more room for that pedestrian environment. The right-of-way width is a little less than the previous alternative. The previous alternative was a 70-foot right-of-way need. This will be a 68-foot. But the big thing with this one is alternative C2 does avoid the buildings. And the way we accomplish that is we have a reduced sidewalk width. So we do reduce the lane widths slightly, all within still standards for the state and federal. But about 500 feet of that 8,000, we do have a reduced sidewalk section, and that's just along those building fronts. And the change is very minimal. It still meets all ADA accessibility requirements. It actually is some of the desired criteria from a sidewalk width standpoint. So we're not meeting minimum standards, we're meeting desired standards still with this option. And that would be a 5-foot sidewalk along the buildings and a reduced boulevard width of 2 feet. So that's what this one will look like with the visualization. Still, same lane configuration, a little bit of reduced in the lane widths, but as you approach the buildings to the north there on the top of the screen, you can see that reduction in the sidewalk width slightly compared to the rest of the corridor. And again, those reductions just happen at those buildings that are right up against the right-of-way. All the other improvements remain the same. Our last alternative is a 3-lane section between 18th and University. So we reduce one of the lanes in the eastbound direction and have that lane drop at 18th at the signalized intersection and create a 3-lane section, one lane in each direction with a center turn lane. This alternative completes the construction all within the existing 60-foot corridor. By reducing that width, it gains some additional width for that pedestrian environment by removing one of the lanes. As you can see, 1 lane in each direction, pedestrian environment remains at that maximum 6-foot sidewalk, 4-foot boulevard. And here's just a little snapshot of some of the improvements that were done on the previous downtown project. And for that alternative C2 with those reduced sidewalk widths at the buildings, that first picture there kind of represents what that would look like, what that would feel like for a pedestrian. And then the last 2 pictures really represent what that ultimate section of a 6-foot walk and a 4-foot boulevard would represent. So here's just a little summary between the alternatives. Again, really focusing on the differences between those, which is the number of lanes for the alternative C options, and then the 3-lane option of alternative D, the building impacts that each of those represent. And with those building impacts, there are some building modifications that would be made, but also some relocations depending on the impact to that property. I believe with alternative C1, with the 7 properties, 2 of those buildings could be modified and remain. The rest of the 5 buildings would need to be removed and relocated, those businesses. And then, go back one more thing. We talked about access management. We talked about there's 80 driveways along the corridor, and we've met with the property owners to discuss how they use their property, how can we modify access points to reduce those number of access points right directly onto Main Avenue. And through those conversations, which will continue throughout design, we've confirmed that 24 of them we can close. And there's 7 others that there's potential to modify, either close or consolidate. So really, that's about a 39% reduction in access along Main Avenue, which will help improve safety. All right, I'm gonna pass along to Matt to.
Okay, thanks, Jake. We'll go through a few more slides here and then we'll finish up and take any questions that you have. So we've gone through and done an updated cost estimate and done this in 2026 dollars, or tried to inflate it to 2026 dollars as best we could. So what you're looking at here, a couple things I wanted to point out. The first column shows that when you look at the construction and engineering costs, there really isn't a huge difference between these 4 build alternatives that Jake was talking about. Where we really see that difference is in the second column, the land acquisition and the building impacts and the relocation costs. You can see that really does start to create some separation between the costs of the alternatives. And as far as how that is going to be paid for, it is a combination of federal, state, and city funds. We've shown the ranges here. This essentially is the lowest cost, which I just showed you on the previous slide, up to the highest cost. So depending on the alternative selected, it would fall within these ranges. But these are the current funding shares for the project. And the city share, as shown, would be funded by assessments, sales tax dollars, and utility funds. So what we've tried to do here, and I'm not going to go through all of this, but I'll try to highlight a couple things. Essentially just listed all 4 of these build alternatives and tried to highlight some of the key differences, advantages, and disadvantages of each one. As Jake mentioned, obviously the C alternatives, or the ones with C in front of them, have the 2 eastbound lanes east of 18th Street, where the D alternative only has the 1 eastbound lane. That's certainly a difference. The other thing we wanted to point out with alternative C1, something that we had to do as part of doing this environmental assessment is go through an environmental justice study. And what we do there is we basically look at the project area and the surrounding area and try to determine if there's any minority or low income populations that live in the area, that use the area, if there's businesses, own businesses, things like that. And as we went through that study, we determined that yes, those populations do exist within this corridor and around the corridor. And then the other thing we determined too is you see the third bullet listed up there under disadvantages under alternative C1, is that in this case we did determine that we had a disproportionately high or adverse impact to that environmental justice population because of, as Jake mentioned, that alternative impacting and causing the removal of the International Market Plaza building, which currently has 18 minority-owned businesses in it. So again, that was part of that environmental assessment and just making sure that we were looking closely at that information. So there's a lot to digest here, so I'm not going to go through all of it, but I'll try to break it down. If we start on the left side, this is basically the 6 categories that our project review committee has used to go through and tried to score these alternatives. You can see, and they're ranked basically from how the committee weighted the one that was considered most important or most optimal for the corridor, down to the ones that maybe were, not to say it's not important, but compared to the others, it was less important. And that was a process with the DOT, the city, and also taking in all the public feedback that we got and giving them a weight also in that. So those three weights were averaged to come up with that second column, which shows the weighted scoring. And it did really line up, it ended up lining up well with our purpose and need that I talked about, vehicular safety, pedestrian environment. Those were definitely some of the more important things we showed in the purpose and need. So it was nice to see how those things kind of ended up lining up. But anyway, so we went through and scored these categories. There was a number of subcategories under each of these as well, but they rolled up to these 6 categories. And taking you down to the bottom line, that's essentially the scoring for each alternative after the project review committee has gone through. And if you want to click one more time, Jeremy. Right now, as you can see, alternative C2 and alternative D both kind of bubbled up a fair amount higher than the other alternatives, and right now alternative C2 scores a little bit higher than alternative D. And I do believe right now that's city staff's preferred alternative for the project. I'm not going to spend too much time on these. There's a few additional add-on options, almost a la carte type options that can go with any alternative that's selected. This first one is between 25th and 23rd Street, widening the sidewalk on the south side to try to improve that railroad crossing for wheeled users such as wheelchairs or people on bikes, because it's such a skewed crossing. That's what this option is looking at. The second one is to add a raised median at 17th Street to restrict those left turns in and out of 17th Street. This option is not supported by any of the project committee members at this time. And this third one, which is the last option, is to reconstruct the curb on the northwest quadrant of that intersection, University Drive, Main Avenue intersection. And that's basically to line it up with some of the restriping we're going to do on the east leg of that intersection to just create one westbound through lane that would line up with that change. Just wanted to highlight too, I'll just go through this quickly, but public involvement has been very important to us since we started this almost 2 years ago. And you can see on a number of fronts, whether it was talking individually with landowners and businesses, as we have done, or working with a neighborhood association. The Jefferson Neighborhood Association has been really interested and receptive to meeting with them, and we've done that twice. And then our public input meetings that we've had, we had the one in October of 22. There'll be another public hearing coming up later this year, depending on the timing of when the preferred alternative is selected. But we are really trying to make a priority of making sure we're hearing what the users of this corridor, what's important to them. Quickly here too on construction, we're still working through this, but we're looking at likely 2 construction seasons. It'd be 26 and 27. The goal would be to do it very similar to how the downtown Main Avenue project was done, where we close a few blocks at a time, get the through traffic out of there, but make sure that we do maintain access to the businesses, and there are a number of businesses on this corridor as well. And this is the last slide, so just had mentioned I was going to bring the schedule back up. So really what we're looking to do from here going forward, the city staff, I believe, is going to be bringing this to PUPEC here in the next few weeks. If you want to click one more time, maybe, Jeremy. And then the goal is to have a PUPEC recommendation to bring back to you at the October 2nd commission meeting for a decision on the city's preferred alternative. We would then bring that to the North Dakota DOT on October 6th and speak to their management. And hopefully, if all those things fall into place, we'll be able to finish up our environmental process and move into design and right-of-way acquisition and stay on the schedule that's shown there. So,
Very good.
Yep,
Jeremy,
thank you very much.
Anything to add?
I would just say this has been, there's 7 or 8 miles of Highway 10 in Fargo and West Fargo, and this is the last mile that's going to be reconstructed. They saved the most difficult for last. But the project team, we have Zoom calls every 2 to 3 weeks, and I think there's 20 or 25 consultants and good government bureaucrats on the line, and we are really looking at this corridor in all these facets, in that red, yellow, green chart. It was really fun going through the exercise of ranking how important this weight is to that, and we've been in this business a long time, and I think our outcome here is going to be a good one, and I think that's we really want. I mean, these guys went through quite a bit of work tonight in front of you. But this is an important project for a lot of people, and we just want you guys to digest what you're hearing tonight, ask us any questions you have, and we plan to come back in 4 weeks.
Well, somebody who drives it every day going to work, it's that left turn that kills you because it's double lane. But if somebody takes a left turn, it just backs everything up. So I didn't really like that at first a one lane, but can see if you have a left turn lane, it does make that better in some ways. And as we've learned downtown Fargo, when we're one lane, somehow everybody figures out how to get in that one lane. Be a little curious how that'll back up on evenings when people are headed back to Minnesota, but assuming you're taking that into account. Any questions of the commissioners? Commissioner Preston?
So if you could go back to the slide where you're comparing all 5 options here. Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about the rationale for the alternative D is the one I'm looking at, the vehicular traffic impact? I'm trying to think here. Coming up to the University Drive intersection, there's still 4 lanes. I'm assuming if option D was taken, that would come down probably to 2 lane or 1 lane in each, I mean.
Yeah.
So
Right.
can you just describe a little bit about the rating or the ranking on the vehicular traffic impact?
Sure, yeah, I'd be happy to. Good question. To answer your second question first, yes, with any of these alternatives, as you're traveling west on Main Avenue and you're approaching University Drive, right now that flares out into 2 lanes, as you mentioned. That would be striped back to just 1 lane and then a right turn lane. So that would be included with any of the alternatives. But as far as the ranking there under vehicular traffic for alternative D, if that was your question, Commissioner Preston, I think it was. So that category really relates to how we're moving traffic through. You know, we have the vehicular safety category, which covers some of the other aspects about accessing businesses, accessing properties, safely traveling through the corridor. But the vehicular traffic, the third one, is basically capacity of the roadway. And because alternative D only does have that 1 eastbound lane, where the other alternatives have the 2 eastbound lanes, it scored a little bit lower than the other ones did because of that.
And basically, people now line up, those are going straight, still in 1 lane, and the people taking a right are lined up the other way. So it would definitely impact how people travel.
Yeah, during peak hours, the queue would get excessively long. I think 1,500 feet is a number I may have remembered from the traffic study. So that would explain why that one's orange.
Commissioner Strand?
Thank you, Mayor. You know, bear with me while my eyes just glaze over with these various options. It reminds me in different ways of the original discussions about the east end of this project reconstruction, and everybody's looking at 5 lanes, and there was pushback, and then I caught rabbits were pulled out of the hat. The concept of the roundabout on the very east end really was a game changer. Going off from Main underneath 10th to the one way up to First Avenue North was a game changer. I don't easily buy into this notion of more traffic, heavier traffic, faster traffic, more cars, more lanes in this world we're in. I'm curious what our options are. What are the rabbits in our hat that would allow us to pull back, pull in, and still allow the flow to go? I don't care to speed the traffic up to the point where they're racing through town. I want safety. And crossing 3 lanes is a whole different thing than crossing 5 lanes for pedestrians over Main. So what are our out-of-the-box thoughts as to how we could get there and narrow the range, the lanes, but still allow the traffic to keep flowing like we did with the roundabout or the underpass? Are there any of those on the radar?
You know, we looked at a lot of different ideas at both on the corridor and, you know, at some of the intersections on the corridor, 18th Street, for example, we looked at that one. I would say that, you know, as you look at this rating, alternative D rates very highly as well, the 3 lane. Clearly, those were the 2 that kind of elevated. So that, by all means, you know, that's just like you said, Commissioner, that's certainly showing itself to be a viable alternative as we go through this scoring. I think the challenge has been with that tight right-of-way and trying to deal with a corridor where you already have those existing buildings built right up to that, to that right-of-way, and you have 60 feet. That's why we tried to develop some of these different alternatives that essentially came through and had the full footprint, or the alternative C2, where it's like you can have the full footprint for 95% of the corridor, but you just reduce it up against the building faces to 7 feet or 5-foot sidewalk. Those are some of the things that we've tried.
I think you pulled all the rabbits out, John. I think this is, initially when we did this, we were going to take a lot of buildings out, 7, 8 buildings. That was a big problem. I think you guys have worked to work this the best way you can do it. And just like Main Avenue, eventually I think actually your C2, probably the owners like the best, or the people like the best as far as going through there. It's just if you drive at, you get impacted at University. That's your impact point. So, Commissioner Strand.
Another data point I wouldn't mind, maybe it's out there easily retrieved or found, but I'd like to know how many pedestrian crossing accidents have been along this route. People trying to get across over the years. I mean, I remember some in my mind, but I think that'd be good information to have available to us historically also.
Sure. And you know what, I did look at that actually today, because I thought that question may come up. Surprisingly, there's only been 5 pedestrian accidents in, I think, the 5-year period that we study. We always study 5-year periods for crash studies. So I think this one was like 16 to 21. So there could have been some since then, obviously, since 21, but there was only 5.
But if you're a pedestrian, that's a pretty serious incident.
Not questioning that as all, but considering the amount of traffic and pedestrians that are using it in 5 years, I probably shouldn't use the term only, but that was a lower number than we would have expected.
Commissioner Strand, just to answer your question, that's a great observation you had about crossing distance, pulling a rabbit out of a hat. We do still have the majority of the design team that went from the roundabout to the west and the counterflow in University. And just attending the traffic safety thing out in Denver 6 weeks ago, we are taking a hard look at vehicular safety, pedestrian safety on all of our designs, where we can tighten some radiuses up, shrink some lanes. We're taking that all into account. The tough thing here is the right-of-way is just so constricted. There's not much room out there to do a lot of fancy things. I've even thought about a roundabout at University in Maine, and as much as I want it to work, it just will not fit. It's just too small of an intersection. Plus, there'd be some great issues in a storm lift. We'd have to move out of the way. So we're looking at everything on this one. Trust me.
One other question that, Jeremy, that has surfaced in the past few years is return on investment. Have we done any ROI analysis of all these proposals?
I don't think we have.
No, this project didn't have the economic component, maybe is what you're referring to, Commissioner Strand, that I think that downtown project had. We haven't done that, I guess, for this project.
A little bit of the difference is you have a lot of existing businesses on this corridor, so it's not like we had empty spaces we've had down on Main. So we have a big agenda. I'd like to continue on. If the Commissioner Strand's further questions, he could contact you. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Jeremy, you would
Thank you.
help
Thank you.
that? Thank you. Item 35, recommendation for appointment of the Director of Finance. Mike Wettinger to bring up.
So, Mr. Chair, I think we should maybe take a break at some point as well. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't even watch the clock. Okay. Could we do that right after this? Okay.
Well, thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm very pleased this evening, very excited to announce the appointment of Susan Thompson to the position of Director of Finance for the City of Fargo. We had our interview process about a month ago in early August, and we utilized the selection committee. I listed the members of that selection committee in your communication that's in the packet this evening, recommending Susan's appointment this evening and ask for the City Commission's consideration for that appointment. We just really want to thank her for all of her service as our interim finance director over the last several months. She's done an admirable job. I mentioned this when I was talking to Melissa from the newspaper. She really has the relationships, that credibility, and that just great nature with our staff, and people really enjoy working with her. So we just congratulate Susan. We thank her so much for her effort, both at the Fargo Dome and now at the City of Fargo's Finance Department here downtown. So let me just add my congratulations, and if you like, Mayor, we can have Susan say a couple of things. But
Susan, could you say a couple things? I know you're excited about this position.
I'm excited about the position, but I also know that we're running late. So I just want to say thank you, and I look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you. And with that, she lobbied for a 5-minute recess. We'll come back at 6:55. Call the meeting back to order.
Thank you, Nancy.
I do need a motion to appoint Susan Thompson, Financial Director. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote. John, I thought you'd say something.
No.
Preston.
Aye.
Kolpak.
Aye.
Strand.
Yes.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye. Item 36, recommendation to approve the third amendment in the development agreement with the Great Plains NP Holding LLC for NP parking garage. Jim Gilmore to explain.
Thank you. We'll talk about the request for the extension in this agreement to give it another 6 months to get the project started and constructed, but also provide you with an update on kind of where we are with the status of the project. It's really the same project. It's the same financing. It's simply a delay in the start. But I did want to also have Judy Lewis from the FMCT give you an update on where they are in their development. The reason for the delay is that Kilborn Group has requested some additional time to get their financing firmly in place. Mike can give you an update on that, but they have commitments for the equity and the loans, but the money isn't in the bank yet, and they'd feel more comfortable having it there to start. The Fargo Mort Community Theater, there's a letter in your packet that they support this extension, and that final agreement, they've agreed with terms to locate here, but the agreement has not yet been signed. I'll just go over the project as a reminder. This is kind of a view from the fire station. Again, primarily housing on the upper floors, the community theater towards the Renaissance Hall, the parking ramp closer to Broadway. You can see here, again, the parking ramp on the right, close to Broadway, the theater to the left. This is a view from the west looking towards Broadway. You can see old Broadway, the same one I showed you before. This is a view from the other direction looking towards Renaissance Hall. And then two quick views from the south side where the railroad is. You can see the parking ramp closer to Broadway. And the FM Community Theater may open out towards Renaissance Hall. In real basic details, the project summary, 168 apartments, small amount of retail, 3,000 square feet, 461 parking spots, the theater. The cost for the parking ramp stays at a maximum of $20 million. Mixed-use development is estimated at $36 million. The theater at $5 million for the core and shell, plus the interior fit-up of that. Construction under this new schedule would be a 14-month build on the ramp and 26-month build on the mixed use, completed in 2025 and 2026. But maybe, I don't know, Judy, if you have time just to briefly kind of give an update on the community theater project, because I know this would be a big win for the downtown if we can get this built, and I'd like to hear a little bit on where you're at.
Absolutely. Hi, thank you so much for everything that you do. This was an amazing evening. Wow. I would really implore you to please approve the moving of this start date. We, as a nonprofit, FMCT, is about $500,000 in so far. So we pinch every single dollar. Every dollar is a donation. And one of the things I've been thinking a lot about, I just recently wrote a grant. Thank you, Commissioner Kolpak, for writing that letter of support. I've been thinking a lot about safety and downtown, and I've been reading about communities all over the country that have begun to understand that in order to keep a city safe, you have to make it accessible to children. And that is the thing that FMCT will do in keeping our project downtown, is we will have every single Saturday, year-round, at least 200 kids in and out of the door all day, and their families. So the designs are going incredibly well. We bring safety to our incredible city, and it's going to be a really beautiful state-of-the-art theater. I can't wait to see it, and I can't wait for you to see a show in it.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Have the recommended motion.
Any questions to Mr. Gilmore? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, if I,
Commissioner Preston?
so what was the second amendment?
The Second Amendment was granting the Renaissance Zone and TIF exemption that was in, the first agreement, but it had to go through a public hearing prior to that Second Amendment. The First Amendment was the first-time extension.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Colpack?
Aye.
Preston?
Aye.
Strand? Mahoney?
Recommendation for extension no later than October 30th, 2023 for the repairs of dangerous building located at 437 23rd Street South. This would be Sean. Number's going to help with it.
Again, Mayor and Commissioners.
Yes, go ahead, Nick.
Just as a little point here, there is an amendment to the suggested motion. It shouldn't be October 30th, it should be December 30th. The individual's asking for a 90-day extension. So just some background, this building was declared a dangerous building in order to be repaired or removed by the city of Fargo in early August of 2022. After that order was issued, the property was sold to Guy Thomas Jr. Mr. Thomas provided the required engineering and documentation to repair the home and was granted an extension for the repair until September 30th. Since then, he has run into some supply issues as well as some issues with some of his contractors and stuff that he needs on site. And he's asking for an additional 90-day extension to finish construction of the building. He's done some substantial work to it. He's taken down most of the trees. I think there's only one tree that needs to be removed. He's put in the egress windows. He's done a lot of plumbing and framing inside. He's got the engineering and stuff in the basement, showing how he can shore that up and make sure it's good. And he's put a lot of money into it. And we're willing to grant the extension. We think it would be good, but keeping everything else of the findings of fact and conclusions order in place with the $50 a day fine if he extends past that December 30th, 2023.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Strand?
Yes.
Preston?
Aye.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Colpack?
Aye.
Mahoney?
Aye. Thank you, Sean. Item 38, recommendation for approval of agreement for the use of opioid settlement funds. Ian McLean to explain. Desi doesn't have to do any of this?
I'm going to try to do it all, Mayor.
Okay.
As the commission is probably aware, we're involved in multiple lawsuits with manufacturers, distributors, sellers, others such as consulting firms relating to their role in the crisis in Fargo. We've settled a lot of these cases. We still have other cases that we expect to settle or obtain verdicts in. So far, the city's received $203,000. I think Cass County and West Fargo combined is probably slightly less, but we're probably thinking $350,000 to $400,000 combined between the three. We expect to continue to receive monies for the next 10 plus years. So we're here tonight because the state passed a law in 2023 that provides that settlement funds must either be given to the state or be provided to the public health unit, which provides services to the political subdivision. Fargo Cass Public Health is the public health unit for Fargo, West Fargo, and Cass County. So we're here tonight about an agreement that would basically be saying that Fargo, West Fargo, and Cass County are going to provide all of their settlement funds to Fargo Cass Public Health. As I understand, Cass County and West Fargo did approve this agreement tonight. So the suggested motion is to approve the agreement on use of opioid settlement funds between Fargo, West Fargo, Cass County, and Fargo Cass Public Health.
Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Or a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Commissioner Strand?
Thank you. I'm not sure if Desi's here, but I do have a question with
She's at the back. She's coming up, John.
with the application of these settlement funds, and now the new opening of people to be able to buy Narcan, naloxone at pharmacies and pay for it. Are we still scholarshiping, or is that still a priority to provide Narcan for free out of your public health services? That won't, I just want to make sure that doesn't change.
Yes, that is not changing at this point. We do have any trainings that we do, or if people need that, they just can contact us. We're actually starting an initiative at the Cass County Jail as well to send naloxone home with any inmate that is released, and also setting up a kind of a general display in their lobby for any visitors that want to have the education and naloxone to take home.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Preston.
Aye.
Colpack.
Aye.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Strand.
Yes.
Mahoney.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 39, recommendation to approve the ground lease with Red River Valley Regional Dispatch Center for property adjacent to 4630 15th Avenue North. I have Chief Dirksen, Eric Johnson, and even Nancy Morris. This is going to be a lot of legal advice.
I'm just here to introduce it. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Back in June, you authorized staff to begin working on a ground lease for building the new dispatch center. We've done that. We've gone through that. Eric Johnson has been doing most of the work on the writing. We've had many discussions with the Triple RDC Board of Authority to make sure that everybody is comfortable with it. And the Mayor and Commissioner Kolpak have been involved in those. And what you have before you in the packet, we've had a couple of changes to that Eric is going to go through and explain all the legal side of that, and then we'll go from there.
All right. Thank you, Chief. Again, Eric Johnson, Assistant City Attorney, and we also, in that same role, represent the dispatch center. So kind of representing both sides of this, but just to provide a little history here, I think it was, as the Chief's letter in the packet suggests, I think it was June when you authorized the staff to make available this land right adjacent to the public safety building located just east of it. The parcel has been identified as about 2 acres. The architects are developing yet a precise description of the property and a legal description, but that's the general location. And the idea is that because as long as the 911 surcharge is in place, Cass County collects that surcharge and pays for the cost of the county of Cass, Fargo, and West Fargo for the North Dakota share of the dispatch center operations. And as long as that's in place, what was proposed by the city to the dispatch center was to use that property for $1 lease, basically. And so then the idea is the dispatch center is going to construct a building of some $12 million or so for that facility and make a fairly significant investment. And so it needs to be a long-term lease. And so that's what gave rise to probably a longer lease than you might normally have intergovernmental-wise, but because it's long-term and things can change, and sometimes the city wants to sell the land, sometimes the dispatch center may discontinue operations because the nature of dispatch ends. We tried to include a number of contingencies in there. And so that's where it adds to a considerable length of the document. But the bottom line is it's a 50-year lease by the dispatch center of this place. It's a ground lease, and so the dispatch center will construct this facility, and they will own the building, and the city will continue to own the property with a couple of possible contingencies. At the end, the dispatch center would have the opportunity to buy the land out from under it and continue, so they have ownership and fee of both the land and the building. But otherwise, the city might inherit the property, or if the city wants to at that time, could say, listen, dispatch center, we don't want to use that building for that purpose anymore. Would you tear it down at your expense? And that's what the lease provides. There's some other contingencies, as you get into a long-term lease, much like we have with the Fargo Dome, right? You get quite a ways into it and you realize, oh, we need to make some improvements. Well, but we only have 20 years left on the lease. And so the lease says if they do make a substantial improvement, they get an automatic, if they want, a 25-year extension so that they can amortize the cost of a major improvement like that. One thing that occurred very recently, there's a Board of Authority meeting of the dispatch center that occurred right around the agenda deadline. And so one item was directed to me to make a change, and that just had to do with this option of the dispatch center sort of buying the land out from the city in the last 10 years of the lease. There's always that question of how do you arrive at a purchase price, and we kind of tried to avoid having the traditional sort of get 3 appraisals, throw out the appraisal that's most distant from the other 2 and average the 2, but it seemed like in the end that was the solution for that problem. And so the change that I just passed out during the break here is just the change language that addresses that and provides that 3 appraisal process. So hopefully that's enough information. I could bore you with a lot more details.
Any questions of Eric? Now, the bulk of the costs can be by the county. This is a great deal, and it's going to be a great position next to our fire station and services out there as well. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Colpack.
Aye.
Preston.
Aye.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Strand.
Yes.
Mahoney.
Yes. And thank you all for staying. It's been a long meeting. I understand that. It looked short when you first looked at it, but it has been a long meeting. Item 40, Fargo Dome Remodeling and Conference Center Project. I have a letter of recommendation from the Fargo Dome Authority, a recommendation of adoption of resolution. It's an amendment to the Home Rule Charter and Lodging Sales and Use Tax. It's a receive and file ordinance enacting Article 324 of Chapter 3 of the Fargo Municipal Code relating to a lodging tax for the Fargo Dome, including a conference center. And it's a receive and file of an ordinance enacting Article 3-25 of Chapter 3 of the Fargo Municipal Code relating to a sales tax for the Fargo Dome, including the conference center. And item C is a recommendation to adopt the resolution, special election matters, lodging and sales and use taxes. Mike Redinger to start this off.
Well, thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. I'll just be introducing our presenters this evening. And let me first start by saying thank you for your time this evening to have a conversation with the City Commission following your recent joint meeting that you had back on the 22nd of August. I really appreciated that gathering and that time together. Thought there were some really great questions that were asked at that time. The mayor just provided an overview of the various items that are going to be addressed this evening. A brief slide deck tonight, and I'll just introduce who's joined us here. Dan Armbrust is here. He'll be presenting on behalf of the Fargo Dome Authority. Eric Johnson, who you just saw, he will talk about the resolution, in particular the ordinance recommendations that are before the commission this evening. Steve Sprague will follow up then on item C, which is the special vote matter and the particulars there. I would also note that Rob Sobolik, Susan Thompson, we're all available for any additional questions. And also want to take the opportunity just to acknowledge the representatives from NDSU that are here this evening. Thanks for being here, as well as team makers. See Eric is here, and then Doug and Deb as well from our Reimagine committee. So just appreciate everybody's interest in this and for really pulling together as a team all things related to this project. So just really appreciate that, and I'll turn it over to Dan, and he'll walk through the slides. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Our most exciting agenda item, and the room's almost cleared out, but we've got some exciting things to talk about. So we're going to just kind of maybe run through. And as Mike said, thank you for attending last month's informational meeting. You were all there, and that was very much appreciated. So thank you. But if we want to just go to the first slide, we'll talk about the plan priorities. Somebody got that, Rob? Okay, so as discussed briefly, we're looking at remodeling the existing facility. It's about a little over 30 years old now, so there's some things that need to be done just to keep it the premier facility that it is in our area.
We're looking to improve the accessibility, dealing with some of the ADA requirements and the new security requirements that we deal with now today for larger events. Enhanced patron experiences. Yes, we heard you. We need more bathrooms. We need more concession areas and things. So that would be part of the plan. And then to create some operational efficiencies in just managing events at this facility. And then the addition of a conference center, which has been talked about for many years. And I think our region or our city needs that. And it would be well received in our area. So there's a $50 million conference center addition as part of this. Next, okay, funding. So we'll talk about the different components. We do have about a $40 million permanent fund. We're going to use up to $30 million of that for this project. We're proposing a 1/4 sales tax that would sunset in 20 years and a 3% additional lodging tax, which would sunset in 20 years. And the use of the funds, as talked about, was to remodel the dome, to add the conference center, and to fund future capital expenditures, and then the accumulation of that permanent fund, helping get that replenished. The key components, kind of just the highlights here, the priorities to fill the void in the local conference center space that we could really use in our area and would bring a lot of economic impact to this area, to infuse the existing Fargo Dome funds, so help replenish those funds. The sales and lodging tax would allow the visitors that are using the facility to be the ones helping pay for it. And then we are proposing a phased construction so we can keep the facility open during the remodel and construction. So the plan is it's a couple, 2 or 3 year project, I'm sure, but we can phase that in and keep it open. And then as I know we've been asked a little bit about parking and seating, but we're not losing any seating or parking, but we're not gaining any either. We are gaining some ADA seating, but it's going to be neutral in those 2 areas. So the motion really, as we're proposing, is to approve this concept for the remodel and the addition of the conference center, and then to approve the steps to move forward and to authorize the city staff to take the necessary steps for a citywide election for, we're proposing December 5th of 2023, to amend the home rule charter, which would allow for the 20-year 3% or 3% additional lodging tax and a 20-year 1/4 cent tax for the sales tax. So that's kind of a quick overview and summary of the plan.
Thanks, Dan. Any questions from commissioners? Appreciate it. Thank you. Eric?
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question if you don't mind? And it's for Rob Soblik. And
Okay.
Rob, if you wouldn't mind coming up, I hate to put you on the spot, but one of the main sales features, obviously, the women's restrooms, I think that's going to be a great thing. But the accessibility thing, I wish you would talk a little bit about that, because what's going to happen, obviously, when it was built 30 years ago, we followed all the rules, but the rules are much different now. And the potential, what would happen is we need to address those issues. And if we didn't, we would be forced to, and the funding for that would be up to us out of the city budget. So if you could just talk a little bit about that. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you, Commissioner Pepcorn, and good evening to all of you. Really good evening. But yes, one of the main priorities of both Fargo Dome Authority, Fargo Dome Management, and City of Fargo is to improve and expand the accessibility. Particularly the ones you see most is the seating. So in our main, if you take it football set, we'll take from approximately 84 accessible seats up to 225, 224 seats. When it comes to accessible seating with the Fargo Dome and its various sets, it is a little challenging to drill down to what the actual is because it's different for every set. But we look at the football seating, and that's the main one where we feel is very important. Enhancements have been made over the years past, but this is bringing it up to even further and trying to give the best experience for all.
So can I just add real quick? I think everybody's familiar. There's those temporary standards that they have that come right out, like during a football game. And also there's at the end zones, there's the 4 corners where they've done a great job. But the rules now are you have to have accessibility spread throughout the building. They can't just be in one location. So and the other thing is the press box. I mean, in the past, that was not accessible either. And so there's lots of those things where the average person, you don't realize that, but now you have to, can you talk a little bit about
Correct.
that?
It'll be, I have to use hand motion, so I remember the horizontally and vertically throughout the building. So with this, we'll be moving some existing Fargo Dome suites around, and then with the addition of that west side club level up on top, as has been discussed, we'll also get that vertical integration again in the southeastern corner with the potential of a club area over that area would also help, and just to move and disperse the accessible seating all around. And then on the female restroom side, with the two concerts we had, obviously I do like to point out that the plan does call for moving from about 135 fixtures to over 260. So RLE Architects and Perkins & Will have worked very hard on those two things with that.
And the other part of his question, Rob, is if the vote did not pass, we still would have to do that, and that cost might be 20 to 30 million. Is that what I heard you say at one time?
I don't know if I've ever put a price on that, and as far as what would happen if the vote doesn't pass,
We'd have to
that would
address
be
the
something maybe for the person standing to my right to answer as an attorney, but not me.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could
Mr.
ask
Preston.
Rob a question before you go. So since the joint meeting, we've been getting some communications, or at least I have. And one of the questions was, in light of trying to make the users pay for basically the upgrades and not putting it on the rest of the public, was there any conversation along that line about adding a charge to tickets?
You know, there already is a facility fee. There are some venues I'm not fully familiar with it that have a ticketing tax on them in addition to any facility fee, things such as that. I believe we were on financing option about 57. So most different areas were explored, and it's something that could be explored further if necessary, but the amount of ticket sales and the revenue generated from it, $8 million in ticket sales at a 1% or a 2% tax doesn't generate the same revenue as 0.25% on $3.3 billion of
So
taxable goods.
You're talking 8 million in a year of ticket sales?
Correct.
Okay.
Or whatever that number is, as we don't.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
it fluctuates every year depending upon the events, the cost of the tickets, things such as that.
Okay.
Okay, Eric now, or Commissioner Stein, did you have a question?
Well, I do, but I'm not sure who should answer it. Is this project proposal, as we see it now, design specific, or is there room for design enhancement?
Probably a Rob question. It's in a, I don't know if you even call it schematic design right now. There's a term for it, but.
I prefer if the attorney answers, but no, it is just schematic right now. So if we're getting if we're receiving a positive feedback and moving towards a vote, we would start moving into a design development phase. So there could be enhancements. As myself or architects and engineering teams will point out, with enhancements come cost changes. But so I think all of those things will be worked out. Again, assuming it's a favorable outcome tonight, moving towards a public vote, the Fargo Dome Authority will be looking to engage with construction management at risk and getting some funding for that to move the project forward, so there isn't a large delay where we don't do anything from now until the date of the vote. And assuming a yes vote, now we have to start it up all over again. So there'll be ongoing conversations with RLE Architects, who is on for our master planning, Perkins & Will, who are the main architects on this project to date, and then also looking at a CM at risk. So I would say yes, there's room for different changes or enhancements that would make sense.
If I might continue, that's where I would put my fingerprints, is having a convention center that's memorable, that you can say you've been to, that you can describe it. You know, what I know we're being really practical, and in this community, everything you build, somebody calls it a Taj Mahal, no matter what. But I'd really like to see us step up the architecture and make it something really, really attractive, iconic, and work with our architecture department, but put your fingerprints on it in a way where people never forget that they've been to the Fargo Convention Center. Because I think what we see right now, and maybe it's just design, but it's very memorable, it's very forgettable. At the moment, the design.
I can appreciate the comments, and what I would say is that for every project, somebody feels it's a Taj Mahal and somebody feels it's boring. So we'll try to go to the middle. But one of the leaders of the architectural team is in the room, and he's heard you. And so we'll look at that. But I think we'll also, again, hoping we're able to move forward with this, I think we also need to keep some fiscal responsibility in mind as the leaders who talked about this in the late 80s and created it did. And everything is important.
Okay, thanks, Rob. Yeah, again, Eric Johnson, Assistant City Attorney. Let me start by just saying you already seen one motion, and there's a second motion here that pertains to sort of my part of this presentation. A third motion will be also related to the ordinances there, and then a fourth motion dealing with what Steve Sprague will be explaining, which is just some matters related to the special election itself, including draft ballot, the draft ballot question. It's fine for you to move them individually. You already paused on the motion one, so I assume that you're headed in the direction of just dealing with them all at the end, and that's just fine. And you have the motion, so you can use sort of the truncated motion if you want, and that'll envelop all four, I think it is, motions here. I'm just here to talk a little bit about the resolution. I think it's probably important to just say, probably as much for the public as it is for the city commission, because you've been through this. We haven't done a sales tax now in a little while. Last one was to extend the flood project sales tax, but that was a few years ago now. But in Fargo, anyway, for every sales tax that gets approved, it's a requirement to amend the home rule charter, and that's a citywide vote. And so that's what says before you. It starts, can start with an initiated measure, but it starts usually with the city commission approving a resolution like the one before you right now. And that's a resolution that ends up getting published in the form of a notice of the election. And so that the voters are made aware of the details of exactly what this home rule charter looks like to create the two taxes, the sales tax, sales and use tax, I should say, and then also the lodging tax. And so that's what this motion is about. I think you've already heard the gist of the taxes. One is the 1/4% sales and use tax with a 20-year term. At this stage, if it is approved December 5th, assuming you approve the motions before you tonight, we would work with the tax commissioner's office to begin collection April 1st of 2024, and it'll extend for 20 years ending March 31st, 2044. In order for the tax commissioner to start collection April 1st, they need to sort of get an ordinance for the sales tax before the end of the year. So they have 3 months to notify retailers, get the digital, the internet sales retailers advised of all that, and put the mechanism in place for collection. Of course, the other home rule charter amendment is to have a lodging tax. That too, actually, there is a state statute that provides for the ability of cities to have lodging taxes. We have an existing 3% lodging tax. That's under our home rule powers, not under the state statute. And this second 3% would also be under the home rule powers. That maybe not all that important to you, but it's just important to just indicate that that's the case, because people can get a little confused about that. In any event, both of those things are going to be on one question, just because the funding of both is necessary to either be approved, or if it isn't approved, fine. But the project, in order to go forward as it is, needs to have both taxes approved. So there's a single ballot question, a single amendment that contains two parts. One's the lodging tax and one's the sales tax. So that's kind of background. And then I think the next thing really, unless you have questions about sort of what the tax is, it's pretty straightforward. The tax money is used for the stated purposes in there. That's the Fargo Dome remodel and the conference center, and for the future purposes that Dan Armbrust was talking about.
Mr. Chairman, could I just
Commissioner
Yes.
Preston?
A quick question. I've always heard food and lodging tax. Is this just hotels, motels? It doesn't include restaurants?
Correct. It's not a restaurant tax, just lodging. So the other component which gets to to this motion that's now on the screen, motion 3, has to do with the ordinances. We amend the Home Rule Charter by citywide vote, but Home Rule Charter provisions are implemented by ordinance. And so the task before us then is to have you, the City Commission, approve the ordinances. You will not approve these ordinances until after you know the results of the election. But because of that somewhat tight schedule between December 5th and needing to get the tax commissioners started by the first of the year, we present this ordinance to you, or these two ordinances, one for sales tax and one for the lodging tax, before you for receipt and filing, with the idea that we'll go through the routine process of doing first reading and second reading thereafter, but wait on final passage until the election has occurred and until the votes are cast and canvassed, and so we know what the outcome is. Only then, and that's then is scheduled to be the day after Christmas Day, December 26th, I think it is, that you would approve final passage of the ordinances, and they would then take effect a couple of days thereafter. So that's really the second motion before you is to receive and file the two ordinances. Again, not approving it until we know the results of the election. With that, I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that you might have. You've got my letter in the packet that provides some further explanation.
Very good. Any questions of Eric Johnson? Steve Frag, you're up next.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. This has been quite a project. When I was first approached by Eric and Rob and Susan, they said, you know, we might have you conduct a special election. And my comment was, you know, my first year here, I conducted 2 elections, and then we combined with the county. And I haven't been fully responsible for an election until my last year here, and now I get to do another special election. So I welcome that opportunity. It does come with a number of tasks that need to be taken care of, and we've got them in your packet. But you know, to set the date of the election, to name the polling locations, to set the hours of the election, and then just so that that this body is aware. Normally, we have had the county conduct our elections for us. In preparation for the 2024 election cycle, the Secretary of State's office has, as of October 1st, has said that there will be no more elections, you know, done by the county. They are preparing the equipment and the poll books and the ballot counting equipment, getting upgrades ready and that type of thing to be ready for the regular election cycle in 2024. So the conduct of this election we'd be going back to the 90s. We'd be using paper ballots with hand counting of the ballots and paper poll books. And so I just felt like that was very important that you understood that. We would have no early voting with this election, but absentee voting would be available to the people that need that. So with that, I guess we're on to the motion number 4, unless you have any questions.
Let's go to motion number 1. Any questions of the commissioners on number 4? Number 1, do I have a motion for motion 1?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Mr. Preston?
So I am going to actually vote to get this onto the ballot, but I want to be very clear, this is not an endorsement of it, but just to put it on the ballot.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Kolpak?
Aye.
Preston?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. Motion 2. Adopt resolution proposing to amend the City of Home Rule Charter authorizing lodging and tax and sales and use tax as presented. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Mr. Strand?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to acknowledge that I've made some mentions about the sales tax cap on this, and a long story short, as I understand it, we're unable to separate these issues out and have one tax with a cap and one tax without a cap. In theory, I wish we didn't have a sales tax cap, but my sense of it is we can't address that or change it regardless. And I wouldn't consider that a reason to derail this movement going forward. But I wish there weren't a cap.
Thank you. Any other comments? Commissioner Pepcorn?
The one thing, I've heard a couple of comments saying that the dome tax never ended, and we all know that it did. And so, and the same wording is in this, that this will go for a certain amount of time, then it will end. And I think that's a good thing for all of us to be aware of, because I think sometimes in the public, things just get repeated, but it did end the first time, and so, and it will end this time, and so, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the same system will be set up, that the tax will end, and then if there are some revenues left over, it will be put into this fund to maintain the facility, which I think has been a great thing. Everyone will agree with that. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Preston?
So what happens if the bonds get paid off quite early and the permanent fund or reserve fund has been built up? Does it stop early?
No, there are no provisions for stopping it early. If the bonds were paid off, there may be options for a city commission at that time to deal with surplus.
The last time with Fargo Dome, they took it back to streets, so that was something that the commission did address, so.
And I think that truly is probably the comments that Commissioner Pepcorn referred to, is the perception on the public side is that it did roll over to continue on with the original sales tax. So,
So, Mr. Chair, but that was a vote, the citizens voted on that too, and that'd be, if that happens again, we would be happy with that too. That would be an opportunity for the public to decide what to do. But I will say the fund was very important for the dome, because each year there's been improvements on our building over the last 30 years, and that's been a great thing, because there's always things to keep a facility updated. That's been very fortunate, and that 99% of facilities like that do not have that, and so the people that were originally on the Dome Authority deserve credit for that. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Are they still okay, Dave, those people on the Fargo Dome Authority, or?
I still hear from them, and I'm sure you do too. They're still around, and they are very proud of, and they were all volunteer time. We all know that, but there were some very smart people that were involved, so thank you.
Roll call vote?
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Colpack?
Aye.
Preston?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. Motion 3. To file and receive 2 proposed ordinance as presented and place them on the agenda for the next regular meeting of the City Commission for first reading. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Colpack?
Aye.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Preston?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye.
Mayor, could I ask a question just while we're going through this? Even though this was scheduled for December for an election, is it absolutely unexpected or is there no chance at all, if it's a really close, tight election, that it would be voted on again? Or is this a one-time we're done vote?
No, it should be a one-time we're done vote. I mean, there are possibilities of challenges to the election results as there's a process for that to occur. If that occurred, and we would, I think, know about it in a timely manner, and the ordinances themselves would probably be delayed until the outcome were known. We'd have to deal with it at the time, but that's a possibility that it wouldn't start collection until April 1st. The Home Rule Charter doesn't require it to start in that window. It's our desire to start, if we're going to be successful at this and getting the favorable vote December 5th, to just get it started with the tax commissioner's office and the lodging tax through Steve Sprague's office.
Commissioner Pepcorn?
No, that was an excellent question, and I just want to follow up with, so 60%, obviously, that's a difficult number, but then if it was close, then is it like any other vote where you can challenge it? I guess that's kind of what Commissioner Strand, and I agree with that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, it's been a little while since I reviewed the challenge process, but yeah, no, there is certainly a means to challenge any election result. And so we would have to take those steps if that were necessary.
Commissioner Preston.
Since this is a December 5th election, I have some concerns about the turnout. Steve, can you let us know, has there been any kind of discussion about encouraging absentee ballots? I really want to make sure that we have the public input, the full public input, as much as possible.
Sure. So our intention is to have an application for absentee voting on the website and available for people, so that they can vote more at their convenience rather than just on that election day. We're taking steps already, anticipation of setting this date of getting our office up and running and ready to go with the conduct of the election.
Since there's no early voting here, I think we really need to focus on the absentee ballots and make sure that people understand they're available and the process for getting them, and making sure that we're advertising that really well.
Just for people to remember, when the special election they had in 1988, there were 19,000 people that came out to vote. In the election we had last June, we only had 15,000 people come out to vote. So it's an important issue for the community, and we know the team's working on it as far as our team is trying to move this forward. But it seems that people do come out and vote when things matter, and this is an item that does matter for them. Can we go on this roll call then, or are we okay? We have a motion and a second. Shelley?
No.
We voted.
On item 4?
No, I don't think we had it.
Not on 4. We did.
No motion.
We need a motion.
Okay, sorry.
No motion on 4.
Yeah. Did you vote on 3?
They voted
Yes.
on 3.
Okay.
Motion 4. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion or questions of the team? Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Preston.
Aye.
Kolpak.
Aye.
Strand.
Yes.
Mahoney.
Aye. Thank you all who stayed around tonight for this important decision. We very much appreciate it. I want to thank the Fargo Dome Authority and all the members that are working on this. I think get it out to the public, and it's very important. I think Charlie's jumping up and down because he might be able to compete with other little cities around here, and might be better for us. Thank you all. Last item, liaison commissioner assignment updates. John Strand.
Nothing to report, Mayor.
Denise Kolpak.
I have 2 slides. The first is on water utility. So the Cheyenne River is the redundant water source for the water treatment plant in our area, and the 52nd Avenue Improvements Project will replace the bridge and road on 52nd Avenue South over the Cheyenne River. So the gates on the bridge used by the water utility to pool water are also being replaced, since the original gates were in service for several decades and have been. The new gates are critical for the Red River Water Supply Project for drought and redundant water supply to transfer Cheyenne water to the water treatment plant. For pumps to work properly, an adequate pool of water is needed at the Cheyenne intake structure. And my second update I want to report is I had a ride-along with Sergeant Chris Mathis on Friday, August 25th from 11 p.m. to 3:30 a.m. I know Commissioner Pepcorn, you've done this, and I would really encourage everyone here to consider doing a ride-along if you haven't done it yet. It started with a tour of the police department, which was very informational. It took time to explain the different divisions. First call, unfortunately, was for an overly intoxicated young woman, but she was brought for care to Sanford Hospital. From there was a traffic stop. We witnessed right beside us someone a student to town turning the wrong way down a one-way. So we stopped her and had a conversation. And then ended up breaking up a large event party on NDSU campus that night. And the rest was really policing the downtown area and other parts of Fargo. But it was very informational, very much appreciate the sergeant's time. Everyone we ran into was extremely friendly and gracious, and I just am so proud to live in this community and work with the police department that we have. So thank you, Chief.
Very good. I have nothing to report tonight. Commissioner Preston.
I'm going to skip. It's 7:45, so I'll skip.
Nothing else. A motion to adjourn? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.